just to quell any doubts about whether the councillors are able to do anything about it at this stage. And I'll just give you the example of Edinburgh. What happened in Edinburgh was that they actually got to the council meeting where the officers had gone through their negotiations, the officers had gone through their evaluations of the bid, and the officers had come up with their single recommendation, and the councillors did as they're perfectly entitled to do and voted against it.
Good.
So you can do it right at the last minute. So the fact that you're getting near to the signing of the contract doesn't mean that it's a done deal. The councillors can still roll back from that decision.
Our chief officer's taking a walk.
Well, I don't want to. I don't want to talk about individuals within the council, but I was sort of trying to hint there at the role that officers play inevitably in procurement decisions. The way that these things work is effectively the councillors are not involved in the competitive dialogue process. They can't be involved in it. It would be unlawful for them to be involved in it. It would lead to legal challenge. They can't determine what comes out at the end of it. So if you go into it with a very wide set of potential outcomes, such as you may have a joint venture or you may have a straight contract, actually the councillors have given up the ability to make the decision about which of those they're going to have. Because what will come out of the sausage machine is a single recommendation that's put that the officers are coming up with, and all the councillors can vote for it or vote against. This business about whether there is an alternative is absolutely critical though. Because if you were a councillor, if I were a councillor, I'd want to have something to vote in favour of, as well as something to vote against. Which is why I think people have been working quite hard to present to the council that there are alternatives to outsourcing. I brought along a couple of APSE publications tonight, which are detailed actually, and they do spell out the detailed alternatives to outsourcing and commissioning. And I'm going to give those to
Councillor Cornelius.
Yeah, and I hope that the council will pause for thought and will carefully consider the alternatives to signing the contracts. And just remember that at all times they do have the ability to stop this procurement process if that's what they're inclined to do. And nobody's going to sue them for it. None of these private companies are going to come in and take them to court. That's not going to happen. It can't happen. They have the right not to go forward with the appointment of the contract. Really important point.
I'm sorry, we cannot do this. Sorry. Please let the people up here answer the questions. It takes time, we don't have a lot of time left.
Andy is absolutely right. It's about the fundamental choice of the model in the first place. And actually, we have struggled to get evidence-based quality discussion and challenge in scrutiny committees. I'm a scientist by background. I'm afraid I'm a real geek about evidence-based decisions. But at the options appraisal stage, I was appalled to discover that all of the comparative data we supposedly needed was hidden in footnotes, which actually linked through to websites where we were barred as councillors. We had no password for them. It was a joke. The issue about the timeline is you're absolutely right that the decision by Cabinet will be made on the 6th of December. Prior to that, there is an opportunity, I put in quotes, of the Scrutiny Committee, the Budget and Performance Scrutiny Committee, to carry out pre-decision scrutiny of the paper that is being brought forward. Not the other options that are rejected, but the paper that's being brought forward. That committee is politically balanced. It is hard not to see it as a box-ticking exercise. We battled over the last 2 meetings to get a proper discussion about the merits of a joint venture or a strategic partnership. But actually the reality is we will struggle because there will be commercially sensitive data. It'll be handled in closed session, part of the meeting, and if anything, if the previous meetings are anything to go by, we will be presented with exempt papers on the night, asked to go through them, and then try to ask proper questions in the meeting. Now, I hope that's not the case. I hope we get all of that information ahead of the meeting and are able to properly read it, digest it, and think about proper, challenging questions. But I have my doubts. And that committee is politically balanced, and therefore, ultimately, If the majority of the committee do not support a recommendation, it will not go through. After the Cabinet has made its decision, we have, in principle, a chance to call in to challenge that decision a couple of weeks later at a similar but different scrutiny committee. We will be faced with the same challenges at that committee, and the only decision that we can come to as a committee is to send the decision back to Cabinet for reconsideration. So the issue for me is that there are councillors across the political divide who are concerned and worried about this. Whether they will be willing to make their views heard in those committees is a different matter. But actually we ought to be pausing and thinking about this, like all councillors who are responsible ultimately to all of you for the decisions that are made, to allow all councillors to really get a detailed understanding of what's proposed and the ability to challenge that. And if we're not happy, ask for it to be reconsidered. I fear that will not be the case.